Andy, how are you? I have another question for you. This one follows a short clip from a program that I enjoy watching. I thought the question and answer were quite interesting, and I'd love to hear your evaluation of the answer, perhaps on a score of 1 to 10, and your reasons why. Thanks.
Stalin permits his wife, Proskobieshev's wife,
Yeah,
to be imprisoned and executed.
yeah,
And Proskobiev remains loyal to Stalin. During the Second World War, he is working 20 hours a day with
yes.
Stalin. And again, he dies in the 60s, as I recall. Not a word of regret, not a word of disloyalty. This is just incomprehensible. How?
Yes, to us it's very difficult to understand. But let's remember once again, Stalin is a communist. He's midwifing historical necessity. He doesn't have time, nor should he devote himself to worries about morality, pangs of conscience, individual victims. Who will forgive him if the revolution is overthrown? Who will forgive him if he fails to build a communist state? He will be guilty before history for having failed in his historical duty. So everything becomes subsumed to this, and mass murder becomes justified because it's part of the movement of history and the supposed greater good of humanity. We don't have any documents that show second thoughts, that show Stalin wondering if he should have killed so many people or feeling guilt about the peasants who starved. The documents we have, and they're very voluminous, are about Stalin not wanting to fall short in building a great communist power and being angry at those who criticized him for doing so. His minions, they were in awe of him. Stalin had capabilities that they didn't have.
Well, you're really putting the hard questions to me, aren't you, Anthony? The problem with responding to this clip is that the speaker is conflating two very different issues and sort of provoking two different kinds of answer from me. So I'll try and explain. On the positive side, or the tragic side, they're both tragic. Yes, the generation of people who came of age in the early part of the 20th century in Russia gave their lives for the revolution. And they identified themselves completely with the tasks of the revolution of achieving socialism, and would have gladly give up that life in that cause and remained faithful to that cause till the day they died. I'm part of a different generation. My 1917 was in 1968, and the experiences of those movements so transformed me that I also have dedicated my life to the struggle for socialism, but things have worked out very differently in this half of the century than they did in the first half. Not more successfully, but perhaps less tragically. The speaker and what they're drawing out brings out the strength of identity formation when an individual commits themselves to a project much greater than themselves. The early Christian martyrs who were roasted to death while forgiving their torturers, and right down through history, we find that people who are gifted with the possibility of participating in an historic change do so with great commitment. The speaker confuses the issue no end, because the fact is that Stalin was a world historic criminal. He was not a revolutionary. Well, nothing is simple here. As a young man, he was just like the others, committing himself to a good cause. But history sorts people out. As the hard times came, he was the first and most significant figure to really pull back, and instead of remaining committed to the causes for which the revolution was made, he became an administrator. He was personally responsible for the actual or judicial murder of all the people that made the revolution. He is responsible, having unwound all the institutions and principles for which the revolution was fought. For example, the education system reverted to the curriculum that it had under the Tsar, under Stalin's guidance. Every aspect of life in the Soviet Union reverted to the worst aspects of life under the Tsar. It's one of these important mysteries of history that he's able to do that under the banner of the revolution itself. And I suppose I'd have to say I've learned from that the danger of such a powerful, all-encompassing ideology such as Marxism, that when subject to distortion and misuse and misunderstanding, it has the potential to provide a vehicle for enormous crimes. I'm not blaming Marxism for that. It applies to any good idea. It can be used for evil as well as good. A good idea can be used for evil as well as good. A half-assed idea that tells half-truths and things can only do half-assed evil and half-assed good. Marxism is a fantastic idea. In the hands of a brutal, cynical, maniacal dictator, it can be bent to serve very reactionary purposes. So this is the contradiction. The speaker says, Stalin was forgiven all these things because he had this great historic task to carry out. Yes, the destruction of the Russian Revolution under the name of the revolution. So I'll score it 2 out of 10 because of the core of truth that idealistic generation of people that signed up for the revolution and gave their lives for it were real heroes. I score it so low because the speaker continues the myth that what Stalin was defending and implementing was communism. What a load of rubbish. Nothing to do with communism or socialism. Nonetheless, even that is an oversimplification because the Soviet Union, with nationalized property relations, did defeat Hitler. Mind you, Stalin didn't even begin to fight back until the Nazi army was on the outer suburbs of Moscow. So blinded was he to the danger of fascism, after having already decapitated and shot all the leaders of the Red Army, which had defeated 14 armies that invaded Russia after 1917. So this was the commander-in-chief from hell. Even then, such was the dedication to the revolution, whose gains had been extinguished by Stalin, that it defeated Stalin. So it defeated Hitler. 95% of the war against Hitler was carried out by the Soviet Union. The Americans and the British came in at the end, when the job was already done, when Hitler's back had been broken. War in the Pacific, of course, is something else.